Hello my dear students. In this flip class I will discuss about some more database concepts which is used in databases. Number one, I'll start with instances and schemas, then data independence, then data manipulation language, and finally data definition language. So let us start with number one, instances and schema. Number one is instance. Instances is basically, as we know that database changes over time. Whenever we are trying to insert information into the database, or whenever we are trying to delete information from the database. Our database, as we have already discussed, is a collection of data, and we will represent database in terms of tables, and each table is represented by column and rows. So that database changes over time whenever information is inserted or deleted. So instance is nothing, it is a collection of information which is stored in a database at a particular moment in time. It is known as, or it is called as, an instance of database. And schema is basically known as overall design or architecture of a database. So let us understand instances and schema with the help of an example. Suppose we have a table of a student or a database of a student having attributes roll number, name, and branch. And there are two rows for student database. Number one is for student Raj having roll number 1 and his branch is BCA. Another student is, say, Ajay, whose roll number is 2 and his branch is BBA. So if I am talking about instances, instance means the row number 1, and row number 2. The values that we have inserted for a particular attribute is basically known as instances. So here 1 Raj BCA and 2 Ajay BBA are known as instances of database. Whereas the student database with attribute roll number, attribute name, and branch with values 1 Raj BCA and 2 Ajay BBA is called a schema. So schema is a layout, overall architecture of a database. So here, student with roll number, name, and branch is basically known as schema, while the values that it contains for each attribute is known as instances. We can also understand it with the help of another example. Suppose we have purchased a notebook from a market. So whenever we are purchasing a book from the market, notebook from a market, in notebook we'll write something. So the written material that we have write on a notebook is basically known as instances, and the book with the written material is basically known as schema, right? Next is data independence. So data independence means that data and programs are independent to each other. Means we can move the data or program without any need to make any alteration in a program. So it is basically it depends upon the data abstraction, where we'll discuss, we have already discussed about the physical, logical, and view level. So there are two types of data independence. Number one is called physical data independence, and number two is called logical data independence. So physical data independence means anything that we have changed at a physical level without causing application program to be rewritten. Physical level means physical schema means how the data is basically stored, and anything that we are trying to store at a physical level will not affect to the next higher level, which is called a logical level or logical schema. Second is called logical data independence, means any changes that we have made at a logical level without causing any application program to be rewritten. Means any changes that we have made at a logical level means what data is actually stored in data, it should not be affected to the next higher level, which is known as a view level. So the question arises in mind, which one is difficult to achieve, physical data independence or logical data independence? So answer is simple. Logical data independence is very much difficult to achieve because any application program is heavily dependent upon and the heavily dependent upon the logic of the database. So logical data independence is much more difficult to achieve as compared to physical data independence. Next is data manipulation language. So by data manipulation language we means that how to retrieve or access information which is stored in a database, and second, insertion of information into the database, or a deletion of information from the database, or finally modification or updating of data into the database. So whenever we are dealing with database, we have to operate four major operations: retrieval, insertion, deletion, or modification into the database. Next is types of DML. There are two types of DML. Number one is called procedural and number two is called non-procedural. So procedural DML means what data is needed and how to get those data. It means we are implementing certain loops or condition to access the information which is stored in a database. We are using loops and conditions like in programming language C and C++. And second is called non-procedural DML. So non-procedural DML means what data is needed without specifying how to get those data. It means that we are trying to fetch the information from the database with the help of query languages, say for example SQL, right? And last is data definition language. So by data definition language we means that it is basically used to specify the database schema. It means it consists of commands. It consists of commands like how to create, how to modify, and how to destroy tables, views, or indexes. So what is table? Table consists of row and columns, and we are trying to store the data in tables, in databases. Views are nothing. These are virtual tables, which is basically access data which is stored in a table. And indexes are basically used to arrange the contents of a column of a table in ascending order or in descending order. So data definition language will work on tables, views, and indexes in terms of how to create it, how to modify it, or how to destroy or delete it.